I'm here with Paul and with Dustin, two good nerds that I've known for a little while. Dustin, we've known each other, I don't know, since 2015 maybe. Some about that when we started working together through the GE initiative that we had. And then Paul, I met you around maybe 2019, 2020, something like that.
Sounds right.
We were probably out. Yeah, that sounds about right. Dawn was working with us at the time.
Pre-COVID.
Yes, pre-COVID. Yeah. Why don't Dustin? Why don't you tell us about yourself and let's say where you're from, and a little bit of just start out how you got into tech. What was your first job?
Yeah. So when I was 16, I got a high school internship / help desk job for an ISP called WildNet. They were in the shore in Covington. So I'm a New Orleans native. I've lived everywhere in general facility. And then, so right there, we started creating PHP websites for Lloyd's of London. So here I am, 16, updating websites for Lloyd's of London. And whenever we don't have help desk tickets coming in because we were really small, degree in computer science. And then right after college graduation at Southeastern in Hammond, I came back to New Orleans right at the end of Katrina. So I graduated, that semester after that hit and started working for Hibernia, which quickly turned into Capital One.
Yeah.
So managing a bunch of their internal applications, right? So we created Hibernia's intranet, and which ended up being a bunch of apps that Capital One took on afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a few years
Wait, so you're still 16? No.
No. At this point, I just went from 16 to 24 in about 2 sentences. And then a little bit of time passes. I started working at GeoCent where I met Paul.
Yeah.
And I think we had like the largest first agile setup in all of New Orleans on those projects right there. Back when it was kind of new to the area, we had to explain to people what it was, right? It wasn't just accepted as the way.
Right. And what year was that again?
That was 2011, 2012.
Okay. Yeah.
And then after that, this time is as a JavaScript developer. Did a little short stint back at Capital One, working on some of their online teams, and then went to GE, where I started leading the talent pipelines.
Yeah.
Right. That's where you and I met, where we started figuring out how to get operations spark people into GE, like fast, high wage jobs,
right.
Software development, and also working with a lot of our universities here in Louisiana.
Yeah.
That was really when I started jumping into more leadership roles and less of software development roles. Fantastic time, had a blast. I realized at that moment that I always enjoyed solving problems, but I enjoyed solving people and process problems more than the technical problems.
All right.
And now I'm over at a consulting firm called Excella. We do a lot of government, but also private industry consulting. Modernizing, me personally, I'm modernizing an HR platform. So I'm leading that effort right now. We're going to be rolling out to 1 million plus people starting in February.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, classic thing, 20-year-old software, putting everything into the cloud, migrating everything, brand new UX, and just everyone's life is going to be better.
Yeah. Very cool, man. Okay. So that's the whirlwind. Paul, how about you? Where are you from? How'd you get into tech? Tell us all the way up to your first couple jobs or whatever.
Okay. So I'm from Poplarville, Mississippi, actually. That's where I was born and raised. Probably one of the least likely technologists in the world, right? Grew up out in the woods hunting and fishing.
Same actually.
So I joined the military. I didn't know what else to do, so I joined the military. They taught me to do avionics, and I remember I took this really complicated piece of equipment off of the ship to go work in a laboratory with a Navy civilian. And I was used to spending like 30 hours on it. But my chief wanted me to go learn from, some really senior people and get some tips and techniques. And I set that piece of equipment down on a bench, and he plugged it in a computer and he pressed go. And he said, okay, come back in 30 hours and we should be good. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I wrote this little piece of software that, does all this work that I would normally do manually. So That's the day I decided I would learn how to write software because I didn't want to be on the other end of what it could do, right?
So on the avionics thing, were you you were doing hardware, or what were you doing exactly?
So I actually did precision measurement equipment. So
Okay.
I worked in the calibration lab on an aircraft carrier. We serviced the whole battle group.
Wow.
So all the submarine equipment, all the destroyer equipment, they'd fly us out to like the minesweepers, like the wooden ships, and the Navy still has wooden ships that do work on those. But we'd make sure that everything read correctly, from physical pressure gauges to oscilloscopes or spectrum analyzers.
Wow.
Things like that. So yeah, it was about 2 years of school in the Navy.
It was kind of like in the engineering side of things, like physical engineering, like mechanical engineering, I mean.
So they had some of that, but it was also the equipment that they used to service the aircraft was another part. So, and in the Navy, if you're in a calibration lab, typically you're an AT or an ET, electronics tech or avionics tech.
Yeah.
And you don't work on just aviation equipment. You also work on the shipboard equipment as well. So they don't have specialized for shipboard or for the avionics. They do it all combined. So you learn it all.
Wow.
Right. And then you also learn physical and dimensional type stuff like micrometers and stuff like that as well. So it was pretty neat.
So it's a little bit like, and that was they had a 2-year program for that. You're going to college for that type dealio
in the Navy. They called it A school and C school. So I went to avionics school in Millington, Tennessee, when that was still open. I think it's in Pensacola now.
Yeah.
And then I went to calibration school in Keesler Air Force Base. So the Navy trained with the Air Force there at Keesler.
And that was 2 years that you're deep into that, into college?
It was about 2 years of free training, paid training. It was pretty good times.
That's amazing. And Dustin, tell me a little bit about like your college years. Like, what were you learning? You did computer science, or what did you do?
Yeah, I did computer science. One thing that Southeastern does a little bit better than I think a lot of other schools have, especially at the time, maybe it's changed since I've been out of school now for 20 years, was we had several project classes. So it wasn't just go and learn object-oriented programming. It was build this case management software, right? And you're competing against other teams. And then they would do this crazy thing where halfway through the project, they would re-scramble all the people in the classroom to be on the other person's team. So all of a sudden you had to inherit someone else's code base and still fix the requirements. And it was interesting to see how those two different teams would come up with two different solutions for the same set of problems at the beginning of the semester. Yeah. And then you have to deal with all the dynamics of feisty 20-year-olds who are all trying to be hotshot developers all at the same time. You probably see a little bit of that at UpSpark. Yeah. And that was kind of that was probably my most memorable like CS experience, is going through those Dr. Oikati classes.
Yeah. Cool. And when you, so I guess, Paul, what, I don't know if we want to age ourselves here, but like when was it that you were coming out of the training thing? Kind of what decade anyway? Let's go that.
It was the 90s. So 96 specifically is when I finished my training and went to the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. So in Everett, Washington.
And then what about you? What was the era that you were in college?
Started in 99 and finished in 2005. So it's been about 5.5 years getting a 4-year degree. I had fun with it though.
Hey man, we that happens here all the time at UpSpark actually. So what about like, so when you guys got out of your training, like I guess Paul, for you had a track right away. They had positions for you and all that kind of, there was opportunity for you kind of in the military track. What about Dustin, like for you, was there tons of opportunity when you were getting out?
When I got out, yeah, I would say just about everybody I graduated with got jobs pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really, I think today when you graduate, it's a lot easier to figure out a targeted role that you're looking for.
Right.
Back then you were just kind of be the tech guy in the room, right? Like you'd have like a small team of 3 people supporting some piece of software. how much you did the talking and how much you did the developing kind of was more team dynamics, where I think today there's more formal roles. You're a customer information specialist. You're the dev. You're the product owner. I would say everybody get jobs really well that kind of fit them. But so job market was easier back then than it was than it is today. I would say this year, right?
Yeah, definitely this year for sure. I mean, the market has been kind of impacted quite a bit from the residuals of COVID, I would say, like, inflation as a result of COVID and all that kind of stuff, and the supply chain making things complicated has really kind of hurt the tech scene in general a little bit. I mean, our grads are still getting jobs at a pretty good clip, to be honest. Most of them are local, I would say, but still, it's not where we were pre-pandemic, but it's still actually a very good clip. But I guess when you were graduating, it was like, Web 2.0 was just, just kind of new. They just finished putting the wheels and the bumper on the thing. And
Facebook had just started like that year. Mobile hadn't hit yet.
Right.
So rounded corners were still being handled with images and some CSS, right? Like it just wasn't built into the standard. That's about that time. Visual Studio was still kind of new, like not visual, but like C# and .NET was still like a kind of a newish thing.
Right, sort of
Microsoft.
Like second generation enterprise type stuff.
Java
was
4 had just came out, which was like the huge leap from like Java 1 and 2.
And so you were doing that kind of programming, huh? Like Java.
Yeah.
That's what you told me you had a background in that, and you said it earlier. It was one of the things you were kind of getting busy with. So was that the kind of stuff that was employed in these big enterprise type bank and all that, Java?
Yeah, Java and JavaScript, but back then you didn't have like all these huge React frameworks, or Node hadn't happened yet, so JavaScript was way more simple.
Yes, it was the Wild West.
So everybody was like whatever and JavaScript, right? And but yeah, it was mostly all Java to do all our business and talk
interesting. And what was I going to say? Like when were most of your gigs down here in New Orleans?
Yeah. Sometimes we had customers on the East Coast, but all of my gigs were here. I've always had a local one. Right now at Excella, all my customers are on the East Coast, but luckily I get to work from home. So.
Yeah, I think they were maybe first out of DC area or something like that. The founders from here, I think, his family's from down here.
Burton. The
Burton.
CEO. He's from here, a Newman graduate. So we met about 2 years ago and really hit it off, and he said he really wanted to grow a site in New Orleans, and we've been working together ever since. Yeah,
awesome. Paul, how did you, like, you just told us the story about going from hardware to software. How did that happen exactly? How did you get software chops together, and what was the platform you first started learning in?
It wasn't a short journey. Right. So I finished up doing electronics in the military for the next couple of years and dabbled with software. But when I got out of the military, I went to work for a pharmaceutical company that let me use my calibration skills that I learned in the military. And then I programmed in something called LabVIEW. I don't know if any of you have ever used it before, but it's like drag and drop programming, but it's meant to interface with like GBIB and serial interfaces. It's meant to control devices, and you build dashboards and whatnot. So automated as much of my job as I could at that place. But meanwhile, I went to college at night. So I was doing the electronics during the day and some software programming. And then at night, I was going to college. And I remember when I got to doing C, that course, I was around helping everybody with pointers and stuff like that. Nice. And the instructor came to me after class. She's like, would you come work for cool. me at my company? And,
cool. Yeah. Nice.
So that gave me my real first programming job, like full-time programming job, which was all C on Solaris. And then I helped them, in future releases, move to Java and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then my next job was where Dustin and I met. So I was chief engineer. I made my way from like junior programmer to chief engineer at
awesome.
GSN.
And what kind of stuff were you doing at GeoSync? Was it kind of in that enterprise world? Like, was it Java-based type stuff? What were you doing? What kind of applications?
So I remember the first application was to help them convert from these overly complex JSP pages, like Java server pages, to struts. Like, that was the first thing I did. And after a week, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do something else. And it just kept going and going. So I had a ton of different programs there. And I think my last couple were like the Chapter 33 program, where Dustin and I worked together to automate the claims for veterans to get their GI Bill benefits.
Cool. Yeah.
And then we also helped build like one of the first DevSecOps platforms there.
Wow.
So
before it was a buzzy in the mouth.
Before they called it
CEOs,
DevSecOps, right? It was called DevOps, but it was a bunch of great technologies cobbled together. It was obviously a lot more complex than what you get today. And then then I've been lucky. I left GeoSync and ran into a group of leadership that I have followed around for like 4 companies at this point. So Koniag Government Services, we've grown quite a bit, and I do everything there, like from programming to solutions architecture, cloud migrations, managing all of our commercial partnerships.
Yeah, I that's where I met you. And so when did you start at Koniag?
I started Koniag itself in 2019.
You started there in 2019. Okay, so I must have met you around that time then.
It was within the first year.
Yeah, we had done. You guys approached us to put together a team and to work on a project, and then like basically subcontracting work for y'all's. And Harvey was helping out on that project, and we had our grads over there on the project. It was awesome. And since then, y'all have hired a bunch of our folks on and off. There's some piecemeal people still over there doing work, and same thing with. So the company's exploding, man. Right?
It's been very rapid trajectory. Yes. Yeah. And
so, how do you? I don't know. How would you characterize that growth? How did you feel? Like you're in all those verticals, right? Like you're kind of like seeing the whole thing.
Yeah.
How did you guys grow that?
So, I mean, the big part of it was that, a lot of us had worked. I said, followed them from 3 or 4 companies. A lot of us had already worked together and that are in the leadership. So I think a lot of it came from that. We already knew how to operate, and then having a good platform to operate on. Koniag was, it's an Alaska Native corporation, so it's very helpful to have those abilities in the government contracting. But we just have a lot of great leadership in the company, and then partnering with the right people in industry. So Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, and Salesforce and ServiceNow are some of our biggest technical partnerships. So they end up helping us find new customers and new opportunities as well. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship there.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, they've been good buds to us, man, over the years.
I think it's worked out really good. I mean, all the people that have come from Operation Spark are thriving at Koniag Government Services.
What it could do.
I was just saying earlier that Mark Luick, he's got now 3 of our folks over there that did kind of, we put together like a little QA kind of track, for our grads. So they went on, we put them on a project here with Harvey first, and then Mark picked them up. So he's got three new folks over there. I guess they've been over there for a little more than 6 months now. They're full time. So that's been great. And so, and Dustin, like when you guys, we met, I guess it would have been 2015, 2016. You guys had already, like GE was a really great anchor in the kind of local development or software engineering kind of scene here in New Orleans. Like having them here, they must have had about 300 people on staff here.
Yeah, well, including contractors at its height, it was closer to 400.
Yeah.
When I got hired on there for that role, it was kind of an interesting problem. They said, "Hey, look, New Orleans is a small market. We've already interviewed hired and sometimes rehired the people that we really want to hire. It's like there's 800 people who have the term developer on LinkedIn in New Orleans, and 600 of them we already have a relationship with. So we really need to ramp up our talent pipeline to keep growing here.
Yeah. And so like I remember when we met, you had already been kind of working with different early talent programs. There was, I know that UNO was a partner. They had kind of I guess, I don't know if I'd call it an apprenticeship, but something like that, like where early talent kind of pipeline where the grads from that program were going in and doing some work. And then you all kind of fired up this thing with us, and it was the best thing that's ever happened for us because, and like it, for our grads, it was a really great first launch kind of thing because they got to go into an environment that was well managed and well run and dynamic. Kevin Dawson was over there too. He was the site leader, right? Is that right?
Yeah, Kevin was the site leader. Yeah, it was fantastic for us too. So for our talent pipelines, we had, 2 initiatives, the local universities, like you just mentioned, we also had like LSU, Southern, a few others, and then yourself, right? And they kind of scratched 2 different itches.
Yeah.
The university students were fantastic. We loved everyone. But there was also, I need to start an internship in June, right? And then I need to graduate in May, and I need you to hire right now. And
right.
Software projects that need to be spun up happen in other months.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
right.
Having the 2-pronged approach and being able to work with you and your team to like spin up quality engineers really quickly, like a good team really fast. Fantastic. It worked out for both of us. Really.
Yeah. Our grads loved it. And it was like, I think we ended up with 33 grads over there. Like we kind of, and you were a big part of architecting that program. Like, I don't know if it would have got off the ground without your kind of vision and experience, actually, to be honest. And so it was just a really great opportunity for us and for our grads. Like you ended up having like, I think 33 people over there from OpSpark, and that helped them launch their careers. And it was just, they're walking into an environment that's well led, agile development. The team management was really great. And I think too, it wasn't, if I can characterize the work environment or the kind of work itself, it was kind of more internal. So, or for companies that are internal to GE. Mm-hmm. And so y'all had a lot more control over what was going on in terms of software. It wasn't a client coming to you so much, an outside client saying, hey, we got this legacy project or this legacy tech stack or whatever. Will you work with it or whatever? You guys got to kind of choose the way you want to work on stuff. If I characterize that.
No, you're getting it right. So like GE is one of the largest services for airplanes in the world, right? Oil and gas. I mean, just name your industry. They're in it, right? Yeah. And they're in it at a scale that very few other people are. So we got to build apps that supported those business needs, those processes and a lot of time the goal was, let's build it for ourselves and resell it later to other people, who may be, because if we can solve all our problems, we'll be able to solve other people.
Yeah. And so how, like, and same thing, like, Paul, we did a project for you guys with, like I mentioned earlier with Harvey. It was, I guess like the temp to perm thing is a model that companies in this size kind of work with a little bit, eh? Was this pattern of hiring something that you'd used before?
No, it was a new approach for us, right? And to give some background on that project, like we needed to scale up Scrum teams, not just like 1 or 2 developers, but I needed to scale up and have a couple of Scrum teams. And that's where you gave me a senior pivot and some of your students to help move the needle.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it was the same kind of thing where that was a pretty fast moving project, if I remember correctly, but still like an awesome opportunity for our grads to go in there and cut their teeth in an environment where it was well led. And how did you guys get into what I'm interested in knowing from both of you is kind of why I brought you here both together is that you both seem to have a talent for building and managing teams, which is like a really ethereal thing. It's like, if you want to learn to write Java, you get a textbook or whatever, do an online course or take a boot camp or whatever. there's lots of kind of ways to practice that stuff, because you can practice it in slow-mo, right? It like practicing code or learning to write code is something you can slow down, step by step, and you're writing commands and so on and so forth. So you can kind of like, that's the mechanics of it. How did you get it into the people management side? And then how did you succeed at it? Because it's like, it's got to be the most difficult. If you ever talk to a small business, and I can say this, being a small business kind of owner or whatever it is that I do here, the people management part is tricky. So how did you guys master that? Because I've seen you both in action, and you're amazing. So it's something I'm curious about. Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely say it's evolving, right? So I don't want to say, I thank you for the compliment, but then maybe I'm my hardest judge, but I always am reflecting on how I messed up in people management since I've become a church. Like I always tell myself like, oh, I should have done it this way. So I think a lot of self-reflection. But there's certain things you try to read, like when you try to become a developer, you're like, do these 10 steps, right? You can do the same thing. Like first time you become an engineering manager, do these 10 things. Every leader needs these 3 things. It was helped to some degree, but one thing you need to learn, because people are different when you're an individual contributor. It's like 80% science and 20% art, but a leader can almost flip that around to be 80% art. Like you have to find your style to do it really well. And you got to kind of guide your team in that way and find out who's going to work with you really well and who's not going to work, who's going to be your anchors, who's going to be people who sail. But then ultimately for like a dev team, I tend to think of it as kind of like a sailing team where you have a captain, you have somebody at the front of the boat who really knows what they're doing. And then you need a lot of other people who work really well together. They'll just pull the lines, right? So that's why partnering with you has always worked for my style so well, because I'll have, 2 senior, maybe a mid, and then I can bring in as many juniors as possible to really operate quickly and efficiently.
Yeah. Was there anyone, like, as you were kind of stepping into those roles or over the years, like, did you guys have mentors? Well, wait, before I answer that question, Paul, how did you, let's hear from you around this stuff. Cause I've seen you work too. And it was impressive to just see you kind of come in, set up a team and get rolling with things, and then kind of in a way like get out of the way a little bit and let them do their thing. How did you get into this?
So I would say like I'm not a people manager, right? So I'm not very good at it because I get distracted by new shiny things all the time. I'm a technologist. So I thrive on problems and finding people that can help me solve those problems. So I'm really good at helping assemble a team, but then marching towards that line. Usually, once I figure out everyone's got everything under control, then they don't need me anymore, and I can go work on another problem. I'm always curious about what people are interested in from a technology perspective. So I end up collecting all of that information, and I'm always just kind of piecing that stuff together. Even at Koniag today, or even companies or whatever, I'm like, hey, this person knows how to do this, or they had experience with this organization, or maybe this type of cloud migration or the software development aspect, or I just know that they're going to be able to solve it because they're like true problem solvers. So I end up running across those people like Dustin across my life, and then I just keep pulling them together. It's just the interest in people and technology, right?
Yeah. Is it fun? It's funny. Like as you're saying that, is I'm wondering if it's something, those characteristics that you identify in someone. Do you catalog that in your head? Is it like something that you're like, oh, I can pull out, Susan on this project because I know she can disarm bombs or whatever it is. Like, how do you go about, like, because you were mentioning like what people are into. You're seeing like the talents of people or the kind of skill sets of people. How do you what's going on there?
So I'd like to say that it's deliberate, but like it's just my interest in problem solving, right? And getting to know people. So I end up I've hired a lot of people from Koniag that work for me at previous companies. And it's because like, hey, these guys really excelled in this kind of situation. So let me go reach out to them.
Yeah. When you were coming up in management and getting into the sort of the people side of it, was there someone that was a mentor or someone that inspired you, or was that part of the process ever in your journey kind of thing? Like in people management, did you have someone there that you work with on that level, or was it just fly by night? You were just trying to solve problems in the time, in real time. Dustin.
The second, I don't think I've ever had anybody say, "Hey, I'm going to be your mentor, and here are the steps we're going to follow," or anything like that. I kind of wish I had, and I didn't really understand the concept of how important it could be and how fast how much it could accelerate someone's job and just their own personal growth by having those. But once I got older and had kids and slowed down a little bit, and I started noticing the world around me and started noticing how people were reacting to me, I changed a lot. And then I would say I gained mentors from observing a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So maybe somebody wasn't my official mentor, but I, closely watched the way they acted. How did he present himself? Asked them follow-up questions on what they did, and then kind of incorporated into myself, right? In the last 10 years, I've had, I don't know, 5 or 6 different leaders who had completely different approaches. And I've learned things that I've liked and not liked from each one of them, and try to keep it in mind as I lead my teams.
Yeah. And how about you, Paul? Was there anyone that you looked up to in this area?
Yeah. I mean, in this, in this geographic area, so Keith Alfonso was my boss at GSN. He definitely helped me a lot. And then I guess all of my bosses I've learned quite a lot from. And I was pretty hot-headed when I was really young. And I remember my boss, Aslan Maxon from United Defense, that instructor from college that hired me.
Yeah.
She's like, "You're intimidating everyone. You need to cool down." And then it did, help not only at work, but in my private life as well.
Yeah.
But I'd say now I actually seek out the strengths of people that I run into. So we have lots of talented leaders, not only at Koniag Government Services. So I will go and I literally ask them to help me learn the skill that I'm trying to pick up.
Yeah.
And generally people, are happy to share those kind of things.
And in the abstract, maybe without giving us the context, when was the last time you did that, and what was the thing you were after?
Oh, last week. So one of the things that I'm learning right now, so I'm in the growth organization, so I don't do operations as much anymore. So I'm more trying to help the company grow, bring in new business, and it's new for me. So I've always done solutioning and working with customers on problems, but I'm like a fish out of water when it comes to closing a deal, right? So those that are closing deals, we have this lady, Kim Hamoka, that in our company, and she's really great at closing deals. So she's helped me a lot. My boss has helped me. So everyone in the growth org, as well as our operating great leaders, have been very open and honest about how to do those types of things. One, don't commit to too much, or to make sure and follow up on a regular schedule. All those types of things that are intuitive to someone that's been doing BD for a long time.
Yeah. Interesting. So BD is business development for anyone on the outside.
Yeah.
For the armies out there that might be listening. Yeah, that's really interesting and admirable. So it's funny. I ask these questions partly selfishly because I'm trying to always learn as well. And the people management part of, when you get teams together in general, there can be some really great synergy, especially in something as creative as software. But it can also be challenging once the deadlines kind of roll in. So maybe tell us a little bit about a scenario where there was some hard deadlines and some tough, constraints that you guys had to deal with, and how did you, just give us a story about how you dealt with some of those things, Dustin.
Yeah. So the thing about deadlines you need to understand is how they originated. There's so many people here at deadline, and they keep marching towards it, right? But this industry, I would say we have a lot more game of telephone than what I admit to ourselves, right? So some executive will come up with an idea, and then the next person comes up with a partial solution, next person comes up with a partial solution, then all of a sudden the whole band is marching towards this thing on this date. But you need to understand what's driving that deadline. Is there a money attached to it? Like, do we not get funds next year if we don't finish this? Or are we expecting revenue to keep the company up and running? Right. You know, and what is the actual problem we're trying to solve? Like, did we, when we had all the time and money at the beginning of this project, come up with this gigantic solution that solved our immediate problem plus some, or is there like, or you know, are we still hitting the right target, right? And then the other aspect of it, I would say, is clear communications when things are going wrong and things may move. A lot of software developers don't realize that the executive team can find multiple solutions to solve their problem, and not all of them are technical solutions, right? So just for instance, you talk about being in the growth team, right? Like, say you want to grow by 500 people next year. Well, you can either do that through winning more work, or you can do that by buying another company, right? So, and if this team's not winning work, they have to go find another solution, right? So, I think that's a lesson that maybe a lot of people can learn about deadlines, is to actually know what the real problem is, and if you communicate it well, like give the leadership team a time to maybe pivot, maybe find a solution outside of your team that can help you.
Yeah, very cool. How about you, man?
So I think the biggest thing is enlisting everyone in the problem. Right. So it plays off your communicate, right? So give the executive leadership, give the client, and give your team the ability to help you overcome challenges with meeting the deadlines. The deadlines move sometimes deliverables move. It can. I've seen it go every single different way you can think of at this point, right?
Yeah.
The worst thing to do is know that you're going to miss the deadline and not say anything.
Right.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
We got someone in the company that says, bad news doesn't get better with Tom.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a culture for us. So
yeah. And let's say, like, before we jump off of that topic, what about, like, how do you deal with how have you dealt with some of the more challenging things around people, like, it's not working out, like, here's a creative thing. No one ever talks about this, so how's that been in your career? Once you're in the management side, that's it's the thing that kills me the most, actually, is like when you have to part ways with someone or something like that. How has that been for you to manage situations like Dustin?
Yeah. So one bottom line, like, no jerks allowed, right? So there's a difference between two people not getting along because they have different outcomes they're trying to make, or they're both maybe trying to climb the corporate ladder and both trying to win at the same time, healthy competition, versus someone who is just mean, right? So I do have that bottom line of, like, if someone, shut it down as quickly as possible, right? And that's probably the easiest way to get on my bad side and not go further in your career with me. But but usually that's not the issue. Usually it's more conflicting priorities or something like that.
Yeah.
I do personally try to get the two to fix it first on their own and not just escalate every issue. But that doesn't work, right? Now you got to get into it and you got to choose. And I think that's the first lesson you learn as a manager, is that you're not going to make everyone happy. Right. So you just got to have your guiding compass of, like, what's best for the organization, what's best for your team long term. To help you make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a really like healthy and simplified way of going about it. I'll try to pick that up.
I know. Look, it's all messier when you're looking someone in the face or giving them bad news. But hopefully you got to be consistent in your reasoning, right? And explain your reasoning when you choose somebody. And I found that I'm not always going to make everyone on my teams happy with every bit of news, but hopefully I find it's a win when they already know what I'm going to say before I say it.
Yeah.
Right. If I lead in such a way,
I got you.
it's not a surprise.
Right.
So
Yeah. How about you, man?
So definitely been around long enough to have a few hard conversations. Not everyone is suited to do every kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that's worked best for me is just to be clear about expectations and then let people make the right decision. I find that most people, if they know that they aren't going to be accomplished what's needed, then they find a different situation.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if at all possible, we want to help, right?
Yeah.
So we'll do mentorship, we'll do training, and personality issues, like those are random. Like we don't,
Yeah.
can't put
Right.
you can't quantify those, right? But generally the types of situations that I ran to have not been the personality issues that some people just aren't suited for consulting. Some people are not suited for software development.
Yeah.
They came out of college thinking that's what they wanted to do, and maybe they did really great at testing after that. So trying to help them find a path forward, being clear about the expectations, and being a human about it, right?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think that it's a tricky thing, man. What you're doing in your travels now, in your capacity and management, and I guess Paul, you've stepped into a bunch of different areas within Koniag now, but Dustin, you're still heavily on people management, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's my passion. I like it in more.
Yeah.
I like I said in the beginning, I like technical problems. I always love solving problems, but I really do. When seeing my team succeed, usually makes me more joy at the end of the day than me succeeding.
Yeah.
So I always you ask like one thing I've learned from a leader like Kevin Dawson mentioned earlier. You know, he said your number one thing is to work yourself out of a job. It's just, as a leader, you're not doing anything. You've really built a great team, and I've held on to that all these years.
I like the sound. I like the sound. I like the sound of this. But I got a lot of work to do, I guess, because I'm still.
There's always something else to do. With that being said, right? Like, you know,
Yeah, man. Well, I'll also say, like, you know, you both have been very good friends to the organization over the years. Like Paul, you really went out of your way to find us and work with us. I can't even remember how you found us, man, because I didn't meet you at an event or anything like that. But somehow you came in and were like, hey, I need a team. I need to put together people. And, you know, we started working together. But what I appreciate about that is that you gave us the shot. You know, you saw we were training people down here locally, and because you were kind of living in the area at the time or something.
Yeah, I was living in Slidell. But I don't remember who told me about you guys. But when I heard, I remember you invited me to one of the graduations. And I picked up a couple of your students then. Lisa and Rachel.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And they came to work for us. They were successful. And you know, when you find success, you keep trying to draw from that well, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And same thing, Dustin, like you really helped us out early on when we were getting the employment partnerships together and looking for, you know, a solid pipeline and opportunities for our grads. Why do you think that, what was your interest in trying to help local do-getters like us?
Well, being from New Orleans and being heavily in tech, you know, I'm one of those people where your job is part of your personality, right? So I love tech, and I wanted a larger tech presence here in New Orleans, right? So having an organization like G at the time was awesome, but watching you pump out, like, you know, graduate new, you know, all the new talent, it was phenomenal. Like, so somehow married it to keep it going and show off to everybody all the work we're doing may bring in more people, right? And then help us do, you know, grow the technology side here. So
yeah, it was awesome, man. I mean, those are the good times, man. No, I mean, there's still stuff going on in New Orleans. I shouldn't say that. Like how do you feel about the scene now in New Orleans? Because this is what I wanted to pivot to too, because you're still active in you know, a lot of community stuff. You're running the Agile group, and so tell us a little bit about that and how you feel about the local scene. What's going on?
the local scenes here, we have a lot more digital nomads than we realize. So the monthly meetups coming out of COVID were at zero. Everybody stopped meeting up. A lot of people in our field are working from home, and I'm a very extroverted person. I need people in my life. So I was like, I need to interact with more tech people. I need to know what's going on here. And I was kind of at the point too when I started Excella where I was thinking, is my next job making me move, right? Like, I want to keep increasing my role. I want to keep increasing my salary. Am I going to have to leave? And so we went to work and started kicking back the Agile user group with the idea that we can show people that technology is here. We can, hey, like, look at these crazy conversations we're having. Look at all the people who are meeting up. And through that, we've had several people join several startups. We've had several people get jobs at like large corporations here.
Right.
The networking has really worked. We've had some great speakers from people like Microsoft, GitHub, Amazon. So there's not been a lack of talent that I think people think when they think New Orleans, they think, oh, that great, bachelor party I had on Bourbon Street, right? They don't think of all the tech stuff that's happening here, but there's a lot we share stories. And now it's not just Agile NOLA. Since then, we've spawned off several other groups that all can be found on noladevs.org.
Yeah.
So if you want to find any kind of technology meetup, just to hit up to that website and, come join the fun. Most of them have some sort of free food, but at least have really great people. You might even learn something.
Yeah. In fact, Jorge and Colin are running that site. The noladevs.org, right?
Yeah. And they also run the front end party. So front end software development. Their whole bring your own bug concept has taken off when people bring in work and they're like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. So they have a peer mentor group that goes through their Agile group.
Yeah, it's like mob programming. There's like a whole group of people kind of pile on and help you solve your bug or whatever. And you think it's pretty cool. But they've been doing, like you, a lot of like community work to kind of bring people back out post pandemic. So it's been really nice to see. And then, but now, Paul, you're out in Denver. You're really a nomad actually now, eh? You've been traveling around a lot.
Yeah, none of our customers are. I mean, we do have customers there, but I'm not directly supporting them. But I did. That's how I started in Denver, supporting the USDA out there.
Okay, cool. Well, let's see. What else? What's coming up for you guys? Paul, you guys have a lot of growth going on at the company. What do you think is first of all, how do you feel about the the software market in general and the versus the economy kind of thing? Where are things going?
So it's so interesting because you're really isolated from the norms when you're government contracting because the cycles are a little different. So with the election, not quite sure what it's going to look like on the other end of that. Right now, business is good, but we'll see.
Right.
We'll see how things pan out post election, and it's just a little bit separated from like the stock market and what the commercial. Like Amazon laid off tons of people, Microsoft. So the market's not as hot as what it is, but it is a little easier to find very talented people, and they're looking for stable 5-year jobs, and so they come to us.
Tell me a bit, Dustin, about where you're at now with Excella and where you guys see the economy going, and not just on the jobs front, but on the opportunities. I think I read in the news actually, or maybe on LinkedIn, I saw Burton had announced that you guys won a big contract with a banking system.
At MSA with IDB, Interdevelopment Bank. No, I mean everything's upward and onward for Excella. When I started, we were right under 250 employees. Now we're well over 300. So slow, steady. I don't know, slow, but the steady growth and the trajectory has been great. I would say roles wise, when I started 2 years ago, I thought it'd be a lot more like web development, but really we're seeing the industry request is data governance, data engineering, data visualization.
Really?
Yeah, it's been humongous in those regards. So in talking and outside of Excella, talking to other friends who are senior directors and VPs in different industries, they kind of have all the same story,
right?
Which has been slow down on our customer development. Let's get a SaaS product. Let's integrate everything. And then, but we also need to build some sort of data lake to grab all of our data and be able to report on it. Right.
Interesting. Okay. And so I wonder why that is.
My personal experience is to do software development, it's actually really hard.
It is.
Right? When you start, if you want to do it poorly, it's not that bad. I can get something up and running really quickly, right? But to maintain it over time, so
never ends.
And it never ends. Like, so when I had one role and we built and maintained an app that wasn't strategic for us, right? And to get a dev, you're talking about $100,000 plus to maintain it all year round.
Right.
Or I can buy a subscription from a SaaS service that does that really, really well.
Yeah.
For $10,000. Right. So it makes sense until you run into the problem that you can't access all of your data because it's other systems, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's where especially with AI coming down the road, right? Not in the next year or two, but you're talking about long term.
Yeah.
AI is kind of pointless unless you have access to your data and can, So I think you need to, right now, really good companies are figuring that like, how do we actually access all of our data?
Right. And I think too, some of the bigger companies are heading towards how do we power AI? There's a big kind of problem to solve there around power data centers that are fast and secure and that kind of stuff, and that are huge. So I think there's, I've read just articles around some of the development that's going on in these areas, big server farms and things like that are coming online, and then fast, lots of processing power and stuff like that in these centers for, doing the AI computation on the fly. The interesting thing about the market right now is that, like, not a lot of our grads have lost their jobs. So it's to me, it's an indicator that software is still being written and developers are still there. The jobs are still there. I just feel like a lot of the, cuts in the market we've seen have been kind of the bigger companies who are, there's another game going on there around the, and now that money's more expensive, they just kind of cut a lot of the fluff, the stuff that they show to investors.
No, I completely agree, actually. I don't think we're going to have less engineering in the future. We're going to have more. Maybe instead of doing quick front-end apps, it is a lot of API writing. It's a lot of ways to govern your data, data engineering. But all the same practices, the same skill set, it will probably end up with more jobs, right? And we'll probably need more business people who have a technical acumen, who have the background and a light amount of software development, so they can actually build out really, apps for themselves based off if they have the right data set, right?
Right.
So I don't think, but back to your point about the investor community, like they're just like funny things. I've talked to leaders who've told me, all right, our number one job right now is to cut cost any which way we can, even if it means like we're going to cut something that's profitable, we're still going to cut costs, right?
Interesting.
So like investors are definitely looking, and I think that's one aspect that a lot of engineers don't think about, how much the finance community actually impacts the tech community.
100%. Yeah. Well, so to finish up, man, what's coming down the pipe for you? What do you see as the near future, and what do you find interesting right now? Where's your mind at?
Where's my mind at? So this past year I've taken over a major project. Development's my responsibility, but like I'm also delivering this to over 1 million people.
Wow.
So a lot of my time has been in this change management space and communication space, and really like how do we offer a website out to 1 million people that doesn't want the website willing, like they appreciate the upgrades, right? But really this is like a change in their process from day to day.
Yeah.
It's not a social media site that they're choosing to go to. Right. So that's been this world of change management has been really interesting for me to like embark in and learn. It's a way for me to learn something new. But really I it's funny, like every time you accomplish the next part of your career, you just want to, all right, what happens if I go one step higher, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that need just to do a little bit more. Personally, getting back to enjoying New Orleans. So I have a 7-year-old, and so almost every single day I'm at soccer or jujitsu, you know, keeping him busy on top of homework and everything.
Yeah.
But tonight I'm actually going to hang out with a group of just guy friends to have a good time, and you know, and I'm trying to purposely reach out right now to people, and you know, just to have fun. I don't want to say again, but kind of again. Yeah, it's you know.
Yeah, get out from behind the computer kind of thing.
Get out in front of a computer, but you know, just also just a time that's more about myself, I guess, right? And,
Cool. Well, you deserve it, man. You've helped so many people launch careers and grow in their careers, man. So I just, it's been great talking to you, and I thank you for all the friendship and support you've provided over the years. Because you've actually been from company to company, you know, still engaging with us, and I really appreciate that, man.
No, man, anytime. I really love what you're doing here. It's passion in my heart. Excella Burton also has the exact same mission. So like just alignment between me and the company, and then you has been great. So we just hired Calypso, who just you know, graduated and hoping to continue it, man.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, man, for spending some time with us, and I'll ping you when it's online.
All right, man. Anytime.
Thanks, Dustin.
All right, bye.
Goodbye.